When a widow is forced off her land by the men who killed her husband, she rides into a deadly blizzard, choosing death over surrender. But she doesn't die. Instead, she wakes in the cabin of a silent stranger with scars on his hands and secrets in his eyes. He saves her life, until she finds his journal. A ledger filled with names, all crossed out. The man who pulled her from the snow might be a killer, and now she's trapped with him in the storm. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The frost came early that year, settling over the valley like a curse that wouldn't lift. Mara Vance stood at the edge of the open grave, dirt under her fingernails, cold biting through the thin fabric of her mourning dress. The preacher had already left. So had most of the town. Only a handful remained, standing far enough back that she couldn't mistake their presence for sympathy. They weren't here for Thomas. They were here to make sure he stayed buried. She didn't cry. Couldn't. The tears had dried up 3 days ago when they'd carried his body back from the ridge, when she'd seen the bullet hole in his back and known, it wasn't an accident. But Sheriff Cade had ruled it a hunting mishap. Case closed. No investigation, no justice, just a widow and a plot of land nobody wanted her to keep. Mrs. Vance, she turned. Garrett Drummond stood at the fence line, hat in his hands, expression carefully neutral. He was a broad man, well-fed, with the kind of confidence that came from owning half the territory and wanting the other half. "Mr. Drummond," she said, voice flat, "I'm sorry for your loss." The words came easy, rehearsed. Thomas was a good man. Was he? Drummond blinked. Pardon? You heard me? Mara took a step closer, close enough to see the flicker of irritation in his eyes. You called him a squatter last month, said he had no right to file a claim on land you'd been grazing cattle on for years. Now he's dead and you're sorry? His jaw tightened. That was business, Mrs. Vance. This is different. Is it? For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind picked up, rattling the bare branches overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called out, sharp and grating. Drummond put his hat back on. You've got a week. What? A week to clear out. The land reverts to open claim once the death certificate's filed. I'm offering you a fair price for the cabin and whatever stock you've got left. More than fair, considering. Considering what? That my husband's body is still warm? Considering you can't work the land alone, Drummond said, voice hardening. Considering no one in town's going to hire you. Considering you've got no family, no prospects, and winter's coming. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm trying to help you, Mrs. Vance. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Mara stared at him, at the smooth, practiced sympathy on his face, at the men behind him, ranch hands, all of them, armed and waiting. Get off my property, she said quietly. Drummond's smile faded. You've got 1 week. After that, I'll have the sheriff remove you myself. He turned and walked away, his men trailing behind him like wolves following a pack leader. Mara stood there, hands curled into fists, watching until they disappeared over the ridge. Then she turned back to the grave. I'm sorry, Thomas, she whispered. I'm so sorry. But the dead didn't answer. The cabin felt too big without him. Mara sat at the table, staring at the tin cup in her hands. The fire had burned down to embers, but she didn't bother adding more wood. What was the point? In a week, none of this would be hers anyway. She'd spent the last 2 years fighting for this place, fighting the land, the weather, the men who thought a woman had no business holding a claim. Thomas had believed it was possible. He'd believed they could build something here, something that mattered. Now he was gone, and she was alone. The knock at the door startled her. Mara stood, crossing to the window. A woman stood outside, older, gray-haired, wrapped in a heavy shawl. Mary Clifton, one of the few people in town who'd ever spoken to her without contempt. She opened the door. Mrs. Clifton, I brought you something. Mary held out a cloth-wrapped bundle. Bread and some preserves. I thought you might need it. Mara took it, throat tightening. Thank you. Mary hesitated, then stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She glanced around the cabin, taking in the sparse furniture, the cold hearth, the pack half filled with belongings. You're really leaving? Don't have much choice. You could fight it, get a lawyer, contest the claim. With what money? Mara set the bundle on the table. Drummond owns the bank. He owns the sheriff. He owns half the men in this town. What exactly am I supposed to fight him with? Mary's expression softened. There's other options. You could remarry. John Peterson's been widowed for No. Mara, I'm not marrying some man I don't know just to keep a roof over my head, Mara said sharply. I'd rather leave. And go where? Mary's voice rose. You think any other town's going to be different? You think you'll find work somewhere else? You're a widow with no family, no references, no— I know what I am, Mara interrupted. She met Mary's gaze, steady despite the tremor in her hands. I know exactly what I am, and I'm not staying here to be reminded of it every single day. Mary opened her mouth, then closed it again. After a moment, she nodded. I understand, she said quietly. I wish things were different. So do I. Mary left a few minutes later, and Mara was alone again. She stood at the window watching the sun sink below the mountains. The sky turned red, then purple, then black. Stars emerged, sharp and cold against the darkness. Thomas used to say the stars were proof that beautiful things could survive in harsh places. Mara wasn't sure she believed that anymore. What? The next 3 days passed in a blur. She sold what she could: furniture, tools, the few head of livestock Thomas had managed to raise. The prices were insulting, barely enough to cover supplies for the journey, but she didn't argue. There was no point. On the 4th day, she went into town. The general store was quiet, just a few customers browsing the shelves. Mara kept her head down, gathering what she needed: flour, salt, dried meat, a small tin of coffee. Luxuries she couldn't afford, necessities she couldn't do without. At the counter, Mr. Harris tallied her purchases with the efficiency of a man who wanted her gone as quickly as possible. That'll be $4.30, he said, not looking at her. Mara counted out the coins, setting them on the counter one by one. Harris swept them into the register, then handed her the wrapped parcels without a word. Thank you, Mara said. He didn't respond. She was halfway to the door when she heard the whispers. Still here? Thought Drummond gave her a week. Cursed, that's what she is. Husband dead, land taken. Ought to leave before she brings more bad luck down on the rest of us. Mara stopped, turned. 3 women stood near the fabric display, faces carefully blank. One of them, Judith Palmer, the mayor's wife, met her gaze for just a moment before looking away. Something you want to say to me? Mara asked. Silence. No? Mara stepped closer. Because it sounded like you had plenty to say when you thought I couldn't hear you. Judith's face flushed. We didn't mean— Yes, you did. Mara's voice was quiet, controlled. You've all been waiting for this. Waiting for me to fail. Waiting for me to leave. Well, congratulations. You got your wish. She turned and walked out, leaving the parcels on the counter. Outside, the cold hit her like a slap. Mara stood on the boardwalk, breathing hard, hands shaking, not from fear, from rage. She'd done everything right. Worked the land, kept to herself, followed every rule they'd set. And it hadn't mattered. It had never mattered. Because she was a woman, and women didn't get to keep what they earned. Mrs. Vance? She turned. A man stood a few feet away, tall, lean, with the weathered face of someone who spent more time outdoors than in. He wore a deputy's badge, but his expression was uncertain. Deputy Cole? Mara said. He cleared his throat. I wanted to say I'm sorry about Thomas. He was a good man. So I've heard. Cole winced. Look, I know it's not fair, what Drummond's doing, I mean, but the sheriff, he won't go against him, and I can't— I'm not asking you to, Mara said. I'm not asking anyone for anything. Where will you go? Does it matter? Cole didn't answer. Mara walked past him, heading for the livery stable. She'd already paid for her horse to be boarded, already arranged for supplies to be loaded. All that was left was to leave. But as she reached the stable, she saw him. Drummond. He stood near the corral talking to Sheriff Cade. Both men looked up as she approached, their conversation trailing off. Mrs. Vance, Drummond said, voice smooth. I trust you're making preparations? I am. Good. I'd hate for this to get unpleasant. Mara stopped in front of him. You killed him, didn't you? The sheriff stiffened. Now hold on. Not you. Mara said, eyes locked on Drummond. Him, or one of his men. Thomas found something, didn't he? Something you didn't want found, so you killed him. Drummond's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Vance. One you can't prove. I know. Then I'd suggest you keep such thoughts to yourself. Grief can make people say things they regret. I don't regret anything, Mara said, but you will. She pushed past him, heading into the stable. Her horse, a sturdy chestnut mare named Ember, stood in the stall, already saddled. The stable hand had done good work. Mara checked the straps, tested the weight of the saddlebags. Everything was secure. You really going up into the mountains? The stable hand asked. He was young, maybe 18, with nervous eyes. I am. Storm's coming. Big one, from the looks of it. I know. You'll die up there. Mara swung into the saddle, gathering the reins. Maybe, but at least it'll be my choice. She rode out of town without looking back. The mountains rose ahead of her, jagged and unforgiving. Mara had been riding for 2 days, following old hunting trails that wound deeper into the wilderness. The temperature had dropped steadily, the wind picking up until it howled through the trees like something alive. She should have turned back, should have found shelter in one of the lower valleys, waited for the storm to pass. But she didn't, because turning back meant admitting defeat, meant accepting that Drummond had won, that Thomas had died for nothing, that she had nothing left. And Mara wasn't ready to accept that. The snow started on the 3rd day. At first, just a few flakes, drifting lazily through the air. Then more, and more, until the world disappeared behind a curtain of white. Ember stumbled, struggling through drifts that rose to her chest. Mara urged her forward, squinting against the wind, trying to find any landmark, any sign of shelter. There was nothing, just snow and cold, and the certainty that she'd made a terrible mistake. Come on, girl, Mara whispered, leaning close to Ember's neck. Just a little further. But Ember was done. The mare stopped, sides heaving, head hanging low. Mara slid from the saddle, legs numb, hands useless inside her frozen gloves. She tried to lead Ember forward, but the horse wouldn't move. Please, Mara said, voice cracking. Please, we have to keep going. The wind roared, drowning out her words. Snow stung her face, blinding her. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. Couldn't feel her hands. Couldn't feel anything except the cold. She sank to her knees. This was it then. This was how it ended. Not fighting, not defiant, just frozen, forgotten. Maybe that was better than the alternative. Mara closed her eyes, and then she saw it. A light. Faint, flickering, barely visible through the storm. But there. She forced herself to stand, legs shaking, grabbed Ember's reins. Come on, she gasped. Come on, please. The mare took one step, then another. The light grew brighter. Mara stumbled forward, dragging Ember behind her. The wind tried to push her back, but she kept going, kept moving, because that light was real, and it meant shelter, and it meant she might actually survive this. The cabin materialized out of the storm like a ghost, small, rough-built, smoke rising from a stone chimney. Mara reached the door and pounded on it with numb fists. Please, she shouted. Please, I need help. The door opened. A man stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a face carved from stone. He didn't speak, just stared at her with eyes that were cold and flat and utterly unreadable. Please, Mara whispered. I'm freezing. I just need... She collapsed. The last thing she saw was the man catching her before she hit the ground. Then everything went black. Warmth. That was the first thing Mara became aware of. Warmth and the crackle of a fire, and the soft weight of blankets piled on top of her. She opened her eyes. A ceiling. Rough wooden beams, gaps filled with dried moss, firelight dancing across the walls, the smell of smoke and something cooking, stew, maybe, or soup. She tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her fingers and toes, sharp enough to make her gasp. Don't move! The voice came from across the room. Deep, quiet, with an edge that suggested he didn't say things twice. Mara turned her head. The man sat near the fire, whittling something from a piece of wood. He didn't look up. Where am I? Mara asked, voice hoarse. My cabin. How long? 2 days. 2 days. Mara closed her eyes, processing. My horse, In the shed. She's fine. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. The man didn't respond, just kept whittling, shavings falling to the floor in thin curls. Mara studied him. He was maybe 30, hard to tell. Scars marked his hands, old ones, white and puckered, the kind that came from burns or blade work. His clothes were worn but clean, patched in places. No decorations, no personal touches. A man who lived alone by choice. I'm Mara, she said. Mara Vance. He paused, just for a moment. Rowan. Do you have a last name? Hale.
Well, Mr. Hale, I owe you my life. I don't have much, but if there's anything I can do to repay you, there isn't. The words were blunt, final. Mara blinked. I'm sorry? You don't owe me anything, Rowan said, still not looking at her. Stay until the storm passes, then leave. That's all. All right. Silence settled over the cabin. Mara lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the man who'd saved her. He wasn't friendly, wasn't warm, but he'd pulled her from the snow, tended her frostbite, kept her alive when he could have just left her to die. Why? The storm, Mara said after a while. How long will it last? Week, maybe more. A week, trapped in a cabin with a stranger who barely spoke. Mara almost laughed. After everything she'd been through, this was what survival looked like. Is there anything I can help with? Cooking, cleaning? No. I don't want to be a burden. You're not. Rowan set down the knife and wood, finally meeting her gaze. But I work alone. Always have. So just rest. Heal. Don't get in my way. Mara bristled. I wasn't planning to. Good. He stood and crossed to the door, pulling on a heavy coat. Going to check the shed. Don't touch anything. Then he was gone, leaving Mara alone in the cabin. She lay there for a moment, anger simmering beneath her skin. Don't touch anything, like she was a child. But as she looked around, some of the anger faded. The cabin was sparse. A table, 2 chairs, a single shelf holding a few books and supplies. No photographs, no mementos, nothing personal at all. Just the bare necessities for survival. It was the home of a man who didn't want to be found, or a man who was hiding. The days fell into a rhythm. Rowan woke before dawn, tended the fire, then disappeared outside for hours, chopping wood, checking traps, maintaining the shed. He spoke only when necessary, and even then, only in short, clipped sentences. Mara, for her part, tried to stay out of his way. She helped where she could, preparing meals, mending torn clothes, keeping the cabin tidy. Rowan never thanked her, but he didn't object either. It was a strange kind of coexistence. 2 people sharing a space, barely sharing words. But Mara noticed things. The way Rowan always sat with his back to the wall, eyes on the door. The way he moved. Smooth, controlled, like a man trained for violence. The scars on his hands weren't the only ones. She'd glimpsed others on his forearms, his neck, hidden beneath his shirt. He'd been hurt, often, and he'd hurt others in return. One evening, after supper, Mara finally broke the silence. Why do you live up here? Rowan glanced at her, expression unreadable. Why do you care? Just curious. Don't be. That's not an answer. He set down his cup, jaw tightening. You're here because I let you stay. That doesn't mean you get to ask questions. I wasn't trying to pry. Yes, you were. Rowan stood, crossing to the door. I'm going to check the traps. Don't wait up. He left before she could respond. Mara sat there, frustration boiling over. Every time she tried to connect, he shut her down. Every time she tried to understand, he pushed her away. Fine. If he wanted to be alone, she'd leave him alone. But as the fire burned low, curiosity gnawed at her. She glanced at the shelf. Books, mostly, worn copies of poetry, a few novels, a journal with a leather cover. A journal. Mara stood, crossing to the shelf. Her hand hovered over the journal, hesitation warring with curiosity. This was wrong. It was his private. She opened it. The first few pages were notes, sketches of the land, weather patterns, supply lists. Nothing unusual. Then she turned the page. Names, dozens of them, written in neat, precise handwriting, and next to each name, a line. Crossed out.
Mara's breath caught. She flipped through the pages. More names, more lines, every single one crossed out. Her hand started shaking. This wasn't a journal. It was a ledger, a list of targets. The door opened. Rowan stood in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders, eyes locked on her. On the journal in her hands. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Rowan stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Put it down," he said quietly. Mara's heart hammered in her chest. "What is this?" "Put it down." "These names, who are they? What did you do to them?" Rowan crossed the room in 3 strides, yanking the journal from her hands. "I told you not to touch anything." "You're a killer," Mara breathed. You don't know what you're talking about." "Then explain it to me." Mara's voice rose. "Explain why you have a list of dead people hidden in your cabin. Explain why a man who saves strangers has scars like that. Explain—" "I don't owe you an explanation," Rowan said, voice low and dangerous. "I don't owe you anything." "You're right," Mara said, backing toward the door. "You don't. So I'll leave. First thing tomorrow, I'm gone." "Fine. Fine." She turned away, heading for the corner where she'd been sleeping. Her hands were still shaking. Her mind raced. She'd trusted him. She'd thought, what? That he was some kind of savior? That he'd pulled her from the snow out of kindness? Men like him didn't do anything out of kindness. Behind her, Rowan stood by the fire, journal clutched in one scarred hand. And for the first time since she'd arrived, Mara wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. If the blizzard wasn't the most dangerous thing in these mountains after all. Mara didn't sleep that night. She lay on the rough blankets in the corner, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening to every sound. The crack of the fire, the wind howling outside, Rowan's breathing steady and controlled from across the room. He was still awake too. She could tell by the way he shifted occasionally, by the tension that hung in the air between them like smoke. The journal sat on the table now, closed. But Mara could still see the names in her mind, row after row of them, all crossed out with the same decisive stroke. Who were they? Outlaws? Innocent people? Did it even matter? She'd survived Drummond, survived the town, survived the blizzard, and now she was trapped with a man who kept a record of the dead. When dawn finally broke, gray and cold, Mara sat up. Her body ached, muscles stiff from the tension of the night. Rowan was already at the fire, stirring something in a pot. "Storm's worse," he said without looking at her. "You're not leaving today. I'll take my chances. You'll die. Maybe that's my choice to make." Now he looked at her. His eyes were darker in the morning light, shadows carved deep beneath them. "You want to throw your life away over something you don't understand? Go ahead, but I'm not opening that door in weather like this. You can't keep me here." "I can't stop you from being stupid either," Rowan said. "But I'm not going to watch you walk out there and freeze to death because you're too proud to admit you're scared." "I'm not scared of the storm. I know." He turned back to the fire. "You're scared of me." The words hung between them. Mara wanted to deny it, wanted to throw his certainty back in his face, but she couldn't, because he was right. "Eat," Rowan said, ladling stew into 2 bowls. "Then we'll talk." He set one bowl on the table and took the other to his chair by the window. Mara hesitated, then crossed to the table. The stew was simple. Dried venison, root vegetables, herbs she didn't recognize. But it was hot, and it was food. They ate in silence. When Mara finished, she set down her spoon and waited. Rowan took his time, scraping the last of the stew from his bowl before setting it aside. "The names in the journal," he said finally. "They're not what you think." "Then what are they? Debts?" Mara frowned. "What kind of debts?" "The kind that don't get paid in money." Rowan leaned back, arms crossed. "I used to work for men who settled disputes the permanent way. Someone needed a problem handled. They came to us. We handled it." "You were a hired gun." "Yes." The admission was flat, emotionless, like he was talking about the weather. "And the names?" Mara pressed. "People I was hired to kill." He met her gaze, unflinching. "Every single one." Mara's stomach twisted. "Why keep a list?" "So I don't forget." Rowan's jaw tightened. "So I remember what I was, what I did. That doesn't make it better. I know. Then why—" Mara stopped, frustration building. Why tell me this? Why not just let me leave? Because you're going to leave anyway, Rowan said, and I'd rather you leave knowing the truth than making up something worse in your head. What could be worse than murder?
Plenty of things. He stood, crossing to the window. Snow battered the glass, thick and relentless. Those names weren't innocent people, Mara. They were men who hurt others, men who deserved what they got. And who decided that? You? The people who hired me. The people who couldn't get justice any other way. Rowan turned. You think the law protects everyone? You think sheriffs and judges can't be bought? You've seen it yourself. You know what happens when powerful men decide they want something. Thomas's face flashed through Mara's mind, the bullet hole in his back. Sheriff Cade ruling it an accident without even investigating. That's different, she said. Is it? I didn't kill anyone. No, you just ran. Rowan's voice was sharp now, cutting. Which is fine. You did what you had to do, but don't stand there and judge me for doing what I had to do. It's not the same, isn't it? He stepped closer. You lost someone. So did the people who hired me. You wanted justice. So did they. The only difference is they were willing to pay for it. Mara shook her head. You're twisting it. I'm telling you the truth. Rowan's eyes were hard. And the truth is ugly. It's always ugly, but that doesn't make it wrong. Then why did you stop? The question caught him off guard. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Pain, regret, she couldn't tell. Because I got tired, he said quietly. Tired of the blood, tired of the names, tired of waking up and wondering if the next job would be the one that finally broke me. He turned away. So I left, came up here, and I've been alone ever since. Until I showed up. Yeah. Mara looked at him, really looked, at the scars, the tension in his shoulders, the way he stood like a man expecting an attack at any moment. He wasn't lying. She could see that now, could see the weight he carried, the exhaustion that went deeper than lack of sleep. He was broken, just like her. I still don't trust you, Mara said. I don't blame you. But I'm not leaving, not yet. Rowan glanced at her, surprise flickering across his face. Why not? Because the storm's still out there. Mara crossed to the window, staring at the swirling white. And because maybe you're right. Maybe I don't understand. You don't have to, but I want to. She turned. You saved my life. Whoever you were before, whatever you did, you pulled me out of that snow when you didn't have to. That has to count for something. Rowan studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. All right. All right. The tension eased, just a fraction. Not gone, but no longer suffocating. Outside, the storm raged on. The next few days passed slowly. The storm showed no signs of breaking, and the cabin felt smaller with each passing hour. Mara and Rowan moved around each other carefully, like two wild animals sharing territory, wary, watchful, but no longer hostile. Rowan kept to his routines, chopping wood, checking traps when the weather allowed, maintaining the shed. He spoke more now, though still sparingly. Practical things, mostly. How to bank the fire to last through the night, which herbs helped with frostbite, where he'd found the timber to build the cabin. Mara listened, absorbing the information. She'd thought she knew how to survive. 2 years on the homestead had taught her that much. But this was different. This was survival stripped down to its core, without the illusion of civilization to soften it. One afternoon, while Rowan was outside, Mara explored the cabin more thoroughly. Not snooping, exactly, just looking. The books on the shelf were worn, pages dog-eared from repeated reading. Poetry, mostly. Whitman, Dickinson, a battered copy of Leaves of Grass with notes in the margins. It surprised her. A hired gun who read poetry. Find something interesting? Mara jumped. Rowan stood in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders. Sorry, she said quickly. I was just looking. It's fine. He crossed to the fire, shaking off the cold. You can read them if you want. You like poetry? Sometimes. He hung his coat on a peg. Words matter. How you say something, not just what you say. Figured I should understand that. For your work? Yeah. Rowan poured coffee from the pot on the fire. People lie with words, but poetry, It's harder to lie when every word counts. Mara picked up the Whitman. Did you ever write any? Once. A pause. Wasn't any good at it. Can I read it? No. The answer was immediate, final. Mara set the book down. Sorry, don't be. Rowan sat, cradling the coffee. Some things are meant to stay private. They fell into silence again, but it was different now. Less hostile, more comfortable. Mara found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. The way his hands moved when he whittled, precise and controlled. The way he listened to the wind, reading patterns she couldn't hear. The way his expression softened, just slightly, when he looked at the books. He was a killer. She knew that, believed it. But he was also something else, something she didn't have a name for yet. That night, the conversation shifted. They'd finished supper and were sitting by the fire, Rowan in his chair, Mara on the floor with her back against the wall. The storm had quieted to a dull roar, almost peaceful. Can I ask you something? Mara said. Rowan glanced at her. Depends. The scars on your hands. How did you get them? He looked down at his palms, the white puckered marks that covered them. Fire. An accident? No. He flexed his fingers. Punishment. Mara's breath caught. For what? For hesitating. Rowan's voice was distant, like he was somewhere else. I was supposed to kill a man. Walked into his house, gun drawn, ready, but his daughter was there. Couldn't have been more than 6 years old. She looked at me and I couldn't do it. What happened? The man I worked for found out. Said I was weak, unreliable. Rowan's hands curled into fists, so he held my hands over a fire until I learned my lesson. Horror washed over Mara. That's the world I came from. He met her gaze. That's what I'm trying to leave behind. Did you? Leave it behind? I'm here, aren't I? That's not an answer. Rowan smiled, but there was no humor in it. No, it's not. Mara pulled her knees to her chest. The man who did that to you, is he one of the names in the journal? He was the first. The words were quiet, but they carried weight. Mara understood then. The journal wasn't just a record, it was a reckoning. What about you? Rowan asked, surprising her. What are you running from? I'm not running. You rode into a blizzard with no destination and no plan. That's running. Mara's jaw tightened. I had a plan. Which was? To get away from men like Drummond. The name tasted bitter. To find somewhere I could breathe without feeling like someone was waiting for me to fail. And did you find it? I found a storm, Mara laughed, sharp and humorless. And a cabin with a man who has a very interesting reading list. Could be worse. Could be better. Rowan considered that. Your husband. Did you love him? The question caught her off guard. Mara looked away, throat tight. I thought I did, she said finally. Or maybe I just loved what he represented, a chance to build something, to matter. You matter without him. Do I? Mara's voice cracked. Because it doesn't feel like it. Feels like I only existed because he claimed that land, because he gave me a reason to be there. Now he's gone and I'm nothing. You're here. Here doesn't count. Here isn't real. And it's more real than anything down there. Rowan leaned forward. You want to know the truth? The town, the land, the claim? None of that was real. It was just men playing games with paper and guns. But you survived it. You walked away. That's real. I didn't walk away. I ran. Same thing. It's not, it is, Rowan interrupted. And the sooner you stop punishing yourself for it, the sooner you'll figure out what comes next. Mara stared at him. At the intensity in his eyes, the certainty in his voice. What comes next for you? She asked. I don't know. He sat back. I figured I'd just stay up here until I died. Seemed simpler than the alternative. That's bleak. That's honest. The fire crackled between them. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows. I don't want to go back, Mara said quietly. To the town, I mean, even after the storm. I can't face them again. Then don't. Where else would I go? Anywhere, Rowan shrugged. World's bigger than one valley. Find a new town. Start over. With what? I have nothing. You have yourself. That's more than most people. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons why that wasn't enough, but the words stuck in her throat. Because maybe he was right. Maybe she'd been so focused on what she'd lost that she'd forgotten what she still had. The storm broke on the 7th day.
Mara woke to silence, real silence, not the muffled roar of wind and snow. She sat up, heart pounding, and looked toward the window. Sunlight. Weak and pale, but sunlight. Rowan was already awake, standing at the door. "Storm's over," Mara joined him. Outside, the world was blinding white, snow piled high as far as she could see. But the sky was clear, and the air was still. "How long until the trails are passable?" she asked. "Few days, maybe. Depends on how fast it melts." Mara nodded. A few days. And then she'd have to decide. Stay or go. Over the next 2 days, the snow began to melt. Slowly at first, then faster as the sun climbed higher. Rowan spent most of his time outside, clearing paths, checking on Ember, reinforcing the shed. Mara helped where she could. It felt good to move, to work, to do something other than sit and think. But the question still hung over her. What now? One evening, as they sat by the fire, Rowan broke the silence. "You don't have to leave," he said. Mara looked at him, startled. "What?" "You don't have to leave," he repeated. "You can stay, if you want. Here, with you. Winter's not over. You've got no supplies, no shelter waiting for you down there, and from what you've said, no reason to go back." He met her gaze. "So stay, at least until spring." Mara's mind raced. Stay here in the mountains with a man she barely knew, a man who'd killed people, a man who'd saved her life. "Why?" she asked. Rowan hesitated. "Because it's easier with two people. And because—" He trailed off, looking away. "Because I don't want to be alone anymore." The admission hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Mara felt something shift in her chest. A loosening, like a knot coming undone. "I'll think about it," she said. "Fair enough." That night, Mara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Thomas, about the homestead, about the town and the people who'd turned their backs on her. She thought about Drummond, about the way he'd smiled when he gave her that ultimatum. And she thought about Rowan, about the scars on his hands and the names in his journal, about the way he'd looked at her when he asked her to stay. By morning, she'd made her decision. "I'll stay," she said over breakfast. Rowan looked up, something like relief crossing his face. "Yeah? Until spring. Then I'll figure out what comes next." "All right. But I have conditions." He raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" "I pull my weight. I'm not a guest. I'm a partner. I work. I contribute. I—" "Agreed. And you don't shut me out. If something's wrong, if there's danger, I need to know." Rowan considered that. "Fair. And one more thing." Mara leaned forward. "No more secrets. If I'm staying here, I need to know who you really are. Not the man in the journal. The man sitting across from me right now." For a long moment, Rowan didn't answer. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right. But the same goes for you." "Deal." They shook on it, and for the first time since the storm, Mara felt something like hope. The days fell into a new rhythm after that. Mara learned to set traps, to read the weather, to move through the snow without leaving obvious tracks. Rowan taught her how to shoot, how to skin game, how to preserve meat for the long winter ahead. They talked more. Not constantly, but enough. Rowan told her about his childhood, a farm in Missouri, parents who died young, a brother he hadn't seen in 15 years. Mara told him about growing up in a boarding house, about marrying Thomas more out of necessity than love, about the gnawing loneliness that had followed her like a shadow. And slowly, carefully, something grew between them. It wasn't trust, exactly, more like understanding. They were both running from something, both trying to build new lives from the wreckage of old ones. And for now, that was enough. One night, a month into her stay, Mara woke to the sound of voices, low, urgent, coming from outside. She sat up, heart hammering. Across the room, Rowan's blankets were empty. Mara crossed to the window and peered out. 3 men stood in the clearing talking to Rowan. They were armed, rifles slung over their shoulders, pistols at their hips.
Even in the moonlight, she could see the tension in Rowan's posture. This wasn't a friendly visit. She grabbed her coat and slipped outside, staying in the shadows. "Told you I was done," Rowan was saying, voice hard. "That's not how this works," one of the men replied. He was older, gray-haired, with a scar running down his cheek. "You don't just walk away." "I did walk away 3 years ago. And we let you. But things have changed." The man stepped closer. "There's a job, big one, and we need someone we can trust. Find someone else. There is no one else." The man's voice dropped. "This is Calhoun, Rowan. He's calling in every favor, every debt, including yours." Rowan's hands curled into fists. "I don't owe him anything. You owe him your life. I paid that debt, not according to him." Silence. Mara's breath fogged in the cold air. Her hand drifted to the knife at her belt, a habit she'd picked up over the past month. "One job," the man said. "That's all. Then you're done. Free and clear. And if I refuse, then Calhoun comes himself. And he doesn't take no for an answer." Rowan stood there, jaw tight, eyes cold. Then he saw her. Mara stepped out of the shadows, meeting his gaze. The 3 men turned, hands moving toward their weapons. "Who's this?" the gray-haired man asked. "None of your business," Rowan said. "Everything about you is our business now." The man looked Mara up and down. "She your woman?" "She's a guest." "Convenient." The man smiled, cold and calculating. "Guess that means you've got even more reason to say yes." The threat was clear. Mara felt ice slide down her spine. Rowan stepped between her and the men. "You touch her, and I'll kill you." "Then do the job." "I need time to think." "You've got until dawn." The man tipped his hat. "We'll be camped at the ridge. Don't make us come back here." The 3 men turned and disappeared into the trees. Rowan stood there, fists clenched, breathing hard. "Rowan, get inside." "Who were inside now?" Mara followed him back to the cabin. He slammed the door, then stood there, staring at nothing. "The past just caught up," he said quietly. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Mara crossed to him, forcing him to look at her. "Who's Calhoun?" "The man I worked for. The one who—" He trailed off, but she understood. "The one who'd burned his hands. And he wants you back." "For one job. That's what they always say." Rowan's laugh was bitter. "But one job becomes 2, then 3. Then you're back in it and you can't get out. So don't go. They'll kill me if I don't. Then we fight." "We?" Rowan stared at her. "This isn't your fight, Mara. It is now." She met his gaze, steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. "You took me in. You kept me alive. I'm not leaving you to face this alone." "You don't understand what you're saying." "Yes, I do." Mara's voice was firm. "I've run from enough fights. I'm not running from this one." For a long moment, Rowan just looked at her. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. "All right," he said, "then we need a plan." They spent the rest of the night talking, strategizing, preparing. By dawn, they had something resembling a plan. It was risky, probably stupid, but it was all they had. When the sun broke over the ridge, Rowan was already waiting. He stood at the edge of the clearing, rifle in hand, watching the tree line. Mara stayed inside like they'd agreed, though every instinct screamed at her to be out there with him. She'd loaded both pistols, checked the ammunition twice, positioned herself by the window where she had a clear line of sight. The 3 men emerged from the trees just after dawn. Same as before, gray-haired leader in front, 2 younger ones flanking him. They walked with the easy confidence of men who'd never been told no. "Well?" the leader called out. "What's it gonna be, Hale?" Rowan didn't move. "I'll do the job, but on my terms. Calhoun doesn't negotiate." "Then Calhoun can come up here himself and tell me that." The man's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first." Rowan shifted his grip on the rifle. "Here's how this works. I meet with Calhoun, face to face. He tells me what he wants, and I decide if I'm doing it. No intermediaries, no threats, just business. He's not going to like that. I don't care what he likes." One of the younger men stepped forward. "You don't get to make demands." The crack of a rifle shot split the air. The bullet hit the snow 3 feet in front of the man,
kicking up a spray of white. He froze, hand halfway to his gun. Inside the cabin, Mara lowered the rifle, heart hammering. The shot had been deliberate, a warning, not a kill, but her hands were shaking. The gray-haired man held up a hand, stopping his companions from drawing their weapons. He looked at the cabin, then back at Rowan, and smiled. "Didn't know you had a sharpshooter in there." "You don't know a lot of things about me anymore," Rowan said. "Now take my terms to Calhoun. I'll be waiting." The man studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. 3 days. There's a trading post at the base of the Eastern Pass. Be there at noon. Come alone." "I'll be there." "And Hale?" The man's smile faded. "Don't make us come looking for you again. Next time won't be so friendly." They turned and disappeared into the trees. Rowan stood there until they were gone, then lowered the rifle and walked back to the cabin. When he stepped inside, Mara was still by the window watching. "You all right?" he asked. "I shot at a man." "You shot near a man. There's a difference." "Doesn't feel like it." Mara set the rifle down, hands still trembling. "I could have killed him." "But you didn't." Rowan crossed to her, steady and calm. "You did exactly what you needed to do. No more, no less. Is this what your life was like before?" "Sometimes." He looked away. "Other times it was worse." Mara wrapped her arms around herself. 3 days. That's not much time." "It's enough." "For what?" "To figure out if I'm walking into a trap." Rowan moved to the table, spreading out a rough map he'd sketched. "The trading post is neutral ground. Calhoun knows that. But he also knows I won't come without a reason." "So you give him one?" "Yeah," Rowan tapped the map. "The question is what he wants badly enough to call me back. It's been 3 years. 3 years of silence. Something changed." "What could change that much?" "A target he can't reach. A job too dangerous for anyone else." Rowan's jaw tightened. "Or someone who knows where I am and wants me dead." The words hung heavy between them. "You think it's a setup," Mara said. "I think Calhoun doesn't forgive and he doesn't forget, and I left without asking permission." Rowan met her gaze. "Which means this meeting is either legitimate or it's an execution. I won't know which until I get there." "Then don't go." "I have to." "Why?" Mara's voice rose. "Why do you have to walk into something that might get you killed? Because if I don't, they'll come here. And next time they won't just threaten." He moved closer. "I can handle Calhoun. I can handle whatever he throws at me. But I can't protect you if they decide you're leverage. I can protect myself. Against 3 armed men? Maybe. Against a dozen? No." Rowan's expression was grim. "This is my past, Mara. My debt. And I'm going to settle it before it settles me." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him it was suicide, that there had to be another way. But she'd seen his face when those men showed up, seen the resignation in his eyes. This was always going to happen. The only question was when. "Then I'm coming with you," Mara said. "No." "You don't get to decide that." "The hell I don't." Rowan's voice was hard. "You're staying here where it's safe." "Safe?" Mara laughed, sharp and humorless. "You just said they might come back. How is staying here alone any safer than going with you?" "Because if something goes wrong, you're not in the middle of it. And if something goes wrong, you're dead and I'm alone in the mountains with winter still coming." Mara stepped closer, meeting his gaze. "We're in this together. Remember? That was the deal." "This is different." "It's not." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "You said no more secrets, no more shutting me out. So don't start now." Rowan stared at her, frustration and something else, fear maybe, warring in his eyes. "If I take you," he said slowly, "you do exactly what I say. No arguments, no hesitation. Understood?" "Understood." "And if I tell you to run, you run. You don't look back, you don't wait for me, you just go." "Rowan, that's the condition. Take it or stay here." Mara's throat tightened, but she nodded. All right. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Rowan taught her how to move quietly, how to read the forest for signs of ambush, how to shoot to kill if it came to that. Mara absorbed it all, pushing past her exhaustion and fear. Because if she was going to survive this, she needed to be more than the widow who'd run from her problems. She needed to be someone who could fight back. On the second night, as they cleaned weapons by the fire, Rowan spoke.
When I was younger, I thought killing was simple. Bad people did bad things, and you stopped them. End of story. He examined the pistol in his hands, turning it over. But it's never that simple. Sometimes the bad people have families. Sometimes they're desperate. Sometimes they're just trying to survive, same as you. But you still killed them. Yeah. His voice was quiet. And every single one of them stays with me. Their faces, their last words, the way they looked at me before I pulled the trigger. He set the gun down. That's the real cost. Not the money or the danger, the weight. Do you regret it? Rowan considered that. Some of them, yeah. Others, he trailed off. The man who burned my hands, I don't regret him. He was poison, and the world's better without him. But the ones who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, yeah, I regret those. Mara reached out, covering his scarred hand with hers. You're not that person anymore, aren't I? Rowan's eyes were dark. I'm planning to meet the man who made me into a killer, and if he tries something, I'm going to put a bullet in him without hesitation. How is that different? Because this time you're protecting someone, not just following orders. Is that enough? It has to be. They sat in silence, hands still touching. And for the first time since those men had shown up, Mara felt something other than fear. She felt ready. The trading post sat at the mouth of a narrow valley, surrounded by pine trees and rock formations that offered too many hiding places. Rowan studied it from a distance, counting the horses tied outside, 6, which meant at least 6 men, and looking for signs of an ambush. There, Mara whispered, pointing to the ridge on the left. Sunlight glinted off metal. A rifle barrel. Good eye. Rowan marked the position mentally. There'll be at least one more on the other side, classic pincer formation. So we're walking into a trap. Probably. He handed her the reins to Ember. But we knew that going in. They'd left their horses a mile back, approaching on foot through the trees. Now they stood at the edge of the clearing, exposed and vulnerable. Rowan checked his weapons one last time. 2 pistols, a knife in his boot, a rifle slung across his back. Mara carried a pistol and her own knife, plus the small derringer Rowan had insisted she hide in her coat pocket. Remember the plan, he said. I remember. If shooting starts, I run. I know. Mara's jaw tightened. I still don't like it. You don't have to like it. You just have to do it. He started forward before she could respond. The trading post was a rough structure. Logs and thatch, windows shuttered against the cold. Smoke rose from the chimney. The door stood open despite the temperature. An invitation. Rowan stopped 10 feet from the entrance. Calhoun, I know you're in there. For a moment, nothing. Then a man stepped out. He was older than Rowan, maybe 50, with silver hair and the kind of face that had seen too much sun and not enough sleep. But his eyes were sharp, calculating, and when he smiled, it didn't reach them. Rowan Hale, he said, voice smooth. Been a long time. Not long enough. Calhoun's smile widened. Still angry about the hands? That was business, son. Nothing personal. Everything about it was personal. Was it? Calhoun stepped closer, hands spread in a gesture of peace. You disobeyed an order. I punished you. That's how discipline works. You knew the rules when you signed on. I didn't sign on to torture. You signed on to follow orders. The rest was just details. Calhoun's gaze shifted to Mara, who stood a few paces behind Rowan. And who's this? Your new partner? None of your business. Everything about you is my business. Calhoun's tone hardened. You walked away from an oath, Hale. You think that doesn't have consequences? I think I paid my dues. Not according to your contract. There was no contract. There was an understanding. Calhoun began to circle, slow and deliberate. You work for me until I say you're done. That was the deal. And I never said you were done. Rowan's hand drifted toward his pistol. I'm saying it now. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? Mara's voice cut through the tension. Both men looked at her. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to force a man to do something he doesn't want to do. And that's not business. That's slavery. Calhoun studied her, eyes cold. You've got fire, girl. I'll give you that. But you're in over your head. Maybe. Or maybe I just don't like bullies. Bullies? Calhoun laughed. Is that what he told you? That I'm the villain in his story? He told me enough. Did he tell you about the family he killed in Kansas? Mother, father, 2 children. Shot them in their sleep because someone paid him to. Mara's stomach turned. She glanced at Rowan, but his face was stone. That's a lie, she said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. Is it? Calhoun turned to Rowan. Tell her, Hale. Tell her about the Hendersons. Rowan's jaw worked. That job was a mistake. A mistake that earned you $500. A mistake I've regretted every day since. Regret doesn't bring them back. Calhoun's voice was sharp now. You want to pretend you're some kind of reformed man? Fine. But don't act like your hands are clean. They're not. They never will be. Silence fell over the clearing. Mara stood there, mind racing. A family. He'd killed a family. The job, Rowan said, voice rough. What is it? Calhoun smiled. There's a man. Goes by the name of Vincent Drummond. Runs a ranch operation down in... No. Mara's heart stopped. No? Calhoun raised an eyebrow. You haven't even heard the details. I don't need to. Rowan's voice was ice. I'm not killing for you anymore. Not him. Not anyone. Even if refusing means I kill the girl? The words hung in the air like smoke. Rowan went very still. You won't touch her, he said quietly. Won't I? Calhoun gestured and men emerged from the trading post, 4 of them, all armed. The snipers on the ridges would make 6 total. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take the job, and if you do it right, I'll let you both walk away. If you don't, he shrugged. Well, accidents happen. Mara's hand moved to her pistol, but Rowan caught her wrist, stopping her. Don't, he murmured. He just threatened to kill me. I know, but if you draw now, we're both dead. Calhoun watched the exchange with amusement. Smart man. Now, about Drummond. Why him? Mara interrupted. Why do you want him dead? Because he owes me money. A lot of it. And he seems to think he can avoid payment by hiding behind a sheriff and a small army of ranch hands. Calhoun's smile was cold. But nobody hides from me forever. Drummond. The man who'd stolen her land. The man who'd probably killed Thomas. And now he was Calhoun's target. Mara's mind spun. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. But maybe... I'll do it, she said. Everyone turned to stare at her. What? Rowan's voice was sharp. I'll do it, Mara repeated, stepping forward. You want Drummond dead? I'll kill him, not Rowan. Me. Calhoun laughed. You? A widow with no training and no experience? What makes you think you can kill a man like Drummond? Because I know him. I know his routines, his property, his weaknesses. Mara met his gaze, steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. And because he won't see me coming. Mara, no, Rowan started. It's my choice, she said, not looking at him. You said if something was wrong, you'd tell me. Well, I'm telling you now, this is my fight. This is suicide. Maybe. But it's better than watching you become that man again. She turned to Calhoun. Do we have a deal? Calhoun studied her, eyes narrowed. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right. You kill Drummond, and Hale's debt is paid. You fail, and I kill you both. He stepped closer. But understand something, girl. Once you cross this line, there's no going back. You take a man's life, it changes you. Forever. I know. Do you? Calhoun's smile was predatory. We'll see. He gestured to his men, and they lowered their weapons. You've got 2 weeks. Bring me proof of Drummond's death, and we're done. Fail, and I'll hunt you both to the ends of the earth. Understood. Calhoun turned and walked back into the trading post, his men following. Within minutes, the clearing was empty, except for Mara and Rowan. Rowan grabbed her arm, spinning her to face him. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking you've killed enough people, Mara shot back. And I was thinking Drummond deserves to die for what he did. That's not... Rowan stopped, jaw tight. You can't just decide to kill someone because you're angry. Why not? You did. And look how that turned out. Maybe it'll turn out different for me. It won't. Rowan's grip tightened. Listen to me. killing someone. It's not like you think. It's not justice or revenge or closure. It's just emptiness. And once you do it, you can't undo it. I don't care. Yes, you do. His voice softened. I know you do, because you're not like me. You're not broken yet. Mara pulled away. Maybe I want to be. No, you don't. They stood there, the weight of what she'd agreed to settling over them like snow. We need to leave, Rowan said finally, before Calhoun changes his mind. They walked back through the trees in silence. When they reached the horses, Mara's legs nearly gave out. She leaned against Ember, breathing hard. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Then don't. But Calhoun can go to hell. Rowan moved beside her. We'll run. Leave the territory. Change our names. He'll never find us. He found you before. Because I stayed in one place. This time, we won't. Mara looked at him. At the determination in his eyes, the fear he was trying to hide. He'd do it. He'd run with her, abandon everything just to keep her from becoming what he'd been. But running wouldn't change what Drummond had done. Wouldn't bring Thomas back. Wouldn't give her the closure she needed. I'm going back, she said quietly. Not to kill him, but to face him. To make him answer for what he did. Mara, I need this, Rowan. She met his gaze. I need to look him in the eye and tell him he didn't break me, that he didn't win. And if he tries to kill you, then I'll defend myself. Rowan studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, but we do it my way. We plan it out, we prepare, and we don't take any chances. Agreed. And if it goes wrong, if he even looks at you wrong, I'm putting a bullet in him myself. Despite everything, Mara smiled. Deal. They rode back to the cabin as the sun set, painting the snow red and gold. And for the first time since this had started, Mara felt something other than fear. She felt purpose. The next week was a blur of preparation. Rowan drilled her relentlessly, shooting, hand-to-hand combat, how to move silently through a room. Mara absorbed it all, pushing herself past exhaustion. But at night, doubt crept in. Could she really face Drummond? Could she look at the man who destroyed her life and not pull the trigger? And if she did pull it, if she killed him, what would that make her? You're thinking too much, Rowan said one evening. They sat by the fire, cleaning weapons again. It had become a ritual. How can you tell? You get this look, like you're somewhere else. Mara set down the pistol. I keep wondering what Thomas would think, if he'd want this. Does it matter? Doesn't it? Rowan was quiet for a moment. The dead don't get a say in what the living do, and they shouldn't. Your life is yours, Mara, not his, not anyone's. But what if I'm doing this for the wrong reasons? There are no right reasons for what we're about to do. He met her gaze. There's just survival, and sometimes survival means doing things you never thought you could. Is that what you tell yourself? Every day? Mara looked at him, really looked. At the lines around his eyes, the set of his shoulders, the way he carried himself like a man who'd forgotten how to rest. Do you ever sleep? She asked. Not much. Nightmares? Memories. Rowan stood, moving to the window. But yeah, same thing. What do you see? Faces, mostly. The people I killed, the ones who deserved it and the ones who didn't. He pressed his palm against the cold glass. And lately, I see you. In the clearing with Calhoun, making that deal. Regretting it? Terrified of it. He turned. Because I know what you're walking into, and I know what it's going to cost you. Mar crossed to him. Then help me. Make sure I don't lose myself. I don't know if I can. Try. They stood there, inches apart, the fire crackling behind them. And then, slowly, Rowan reached out and pulled her close. Mara froze, surprised, but then she leaned into him, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. They stayed like that for a long time, two broken people holding on to each other in the dark. When this is over, Rowan said quietly, we leave, both of us. We find somewhere new, and we start clean. What about Calhoun? Let him come. I'll deal with him if I have to. His arms tightened around her. But I'm not losing you to this. Not to Drummond, not to revenge, not to anything.
Mara closed her eyes. Promise me something. What? If I don't make it back, if something goes wrong, don't blame yourself. Mara, promise me. Rowan was silent. Then, I promise. She knew he was lying, but she didn't call him on it. The day before they were set to leave for the valley, a rider appeared. Mara spotted him first, a lone figure on horseback, moving slowly through the snow. She called for Rowan, and they both watched as the man approached. It was the trapper, the one who'd recognized Rowan at the trading post. Easy, Rowan murmured, hand on his pistol. The trapper stopped at the edge of the clearing, hands raised. I'm not here to cause trouble, he called out. Then what do you want? Rowan shouted back. To warn you. Calhoun sent men south. They're watching the roads, the towns. He doesn't trust you to do the job. Why tell us this? The trapper urged his horse closer. He was young, maybe 25, with honest eyes. Because I know what Calhoun does to people. And because whatever you did to earn his attention, you don't deserve to die for it. Rowan studied him. You work for him? Used to. Not anymore. The trapper's jaw tightened. He killed my brother for refusing a job. Said it was an example. So, yeah, I quit. And now you're warning his targets. When I can. He looked at Mara. You're really going after Drummond? Yes. Then you should know he's doubled his guards. Word got out that someone's coming for him. He's holed up in his ranch house with at least a dozen men. Mara's stomach sank. A dozen. They'd been counting on surprise, on Drummond being vulnerable. When did this happen? Rowan asked. 3 days ago. Someone tipped him off. Calhoun. Probably. The trapper shifted in his saddle. Look, I don't know what your plan is, but whatever it was, it won't work now. Drummond's expecting you. Rowan cursed under his breath. There's another way in, the trapper said, through the east pasture. There's an old irrigation tunnel that runs under the property. Drummond's men don't guard it because it's too small for most people. But she might fit. He looked at Mara. You've been there? She asked. Worked for him once? Before he showed his true colors. The trapper pulled out a rough sketch, handing it to Rowan. The tunnel opens into the cellar. From there you can reach the main house. But you'll have to move fast and quiet. Why help us? Mara asked. The trapper met her gaze. Because men like Drummond and Calhoun, they don't get to win forever. Someone has to stand up to them. Might as well be you. He turned his horse and rode away before they could respond. Rowan stared at the sketch, mind working. It could work, he said slowly, if we time it right. Or it could be a trap. Yeah, that too. He looked at her. Last chance to back out. Mara thought about Thomas, about the land they'd lost, about the town that had turned its back on her. And she thought about the woman she'd been when she'd ridden into that blizzard, desperate, broken, ready to die. She wasn't that woman anymore. I'm not backing out, she said. Then we leave at dawn. That night, neither of them slept. They sat by the fire, talking in low voices, making final preparations. And when the first light touched the horizon, they were already on the road, heading back to the valley, heading back to face the man who'd started all of this. The valley looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, like returning to a childhood home and finding it diminished by time and distance. Mara sat on a ridge overlooking the town, watching smoke rise from chimneys, seeing people move through streets that had once felt like the entire world. Second thoughts? Rowan asked beside her. 1,000 of them. She pulled her coat tighter. But I'm still going. They'd made camp a mile outside town, hidden in a stand of pine trees. The plan was simple. Wait until nightfall, approach Drummond's ranch from the east, use the irrigation tunnel to get inside. Simple didn't mean easy. The tunnel entrance is here, Rowan pointed to his sketch. About 200 yards from the main house. You'll have to crawl most of the way. It's going to be tight, dark, probably flooded in places. How long? 10 minutes if you move fast, longer if you get stuck. Mara swallowed. And you'll be where? Creating a distraction on the north side. Draw the guards away from the house. He looked at her. You'll have maybe 15 minutes once I start. That's it. What if something goes wrong? Then you run. Don't wait for me. Don't try to be a hero. You just get out and you run as far and as fast as you can. We've had this conversation. And we'll keep having it until you convince me you'll actually do it. Rowan's expression was hard.
I mean it, Mara. If this goes bad, I need to know you'll save yourself. And what about you? I'll be fine. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. He stood, scanning the valley. We should get some rest. It's going to be a long night.
But neither of them rested. They sat in tense silence as the sun crawled across the sky, each lost in their own thoughts.
Mara kept checking her pistol, loading and unloading it until Rowan finally took it from her hands. You're going to wear out the mechanism, he said. I need to be ready. You are ready. You've been ready since we left the cabin. He handed the gun back. The question is whether you're ready for what comes after. After I confront him, after you decide whether to pull the trigger? Mara looked down at the weapon in her hands. It felt heavier than it should. I don't know if I can, she admitted. Then don't. But Calhoun's my problem, not yours. Rowan crouched beside her. You want to face Drummond? Make him answer for what he did? Do it. But don't kill him because some bastard in the mountains told you to. Kill him because you decide he deserves to die. Not for revenge. Not for me. For you.
And if I decide he doesn't? Then we find another way. The sun finally set, painting the valley in shades of purple and black. Mara and Rowan moved through the darkness like ghosts, keeping to the tree line, avoiding the roads. By the time they reached the eastern edge of Drummond's property, it was past midnight. The ranch sprawled before them, main house, barns, bunkhouses, all surrounded by fencing that seemed to stretch forever. Lamplight flickered in windows, shadows moved between buildings. Even at this hour, the place was alive with activity. He's definitely expecting trouble, Rowan murmured. They crept closer, staying low. The irrigation tunnel entrance was exactly where the trapper had marked it, a stone culvert half hidden by overgrown brush. Rowan knelt beside it, testing the opening. It's smaller than I thought. Can I fit? Maybe, but it's going to be tight. He pulled out a length of rope, tying one end around her waist. If you get stuck, tug twice. I'll pull you back. Mara stared at the dark opening. Water trickled from it, and the smell of damp earth and rot wafted out. I can do this, she said, more to herself than to him. I know you can. Rowan handed her a small lantern. Keep it covered until you're inside. And Mara, he caught her hand. If you see Drummond and you can't do it, if you freeze, that's all right. You hear me? That's all right. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Then she lowered herself into the tunnel. The water was ice cold, soaking through her clothes immediately. The ceiling pressed down, forcing her to crawl on her belly. She moved forward, pushing the lantern ahead of her, trying not to think about the tons of earth above her head. The darkness was absolute. Even with the lantern, she could barely see 5 feet ahead. Water splashed in her face. Something brushed against her leg and she bit back a scream. Keep moving. Just keep moving. The tunnel seemed to go on forever. Her shoulders scraped against stone. Her knees slammed into rocks. At one point, the ceiling dropped so low she had to exhale completely just to squeeze through. This was a mistake. This was a terrible mistake. But then she saw light ahead, faint, filtering down through cracks in what looked like a wooden floor. The cellar. Mara pushed forward, emerging into a larger space. She stood, dripping and shaking, and raised the lantern. Barrels lined the walls, sacks of grain, shelves stacked with preserves, all the supplies a ranch this size would need, and at the far end, a staircase leading up. Mara covered the lantern and climbed. The door at the top was unlocked. She eased it open, peering into a dark hallway. Empty. She slipped inside, closing the door behind her. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure someone would hear it, but the house was quiet except for the creak of old wood settling. Mara moved through the hallway, recognizing the layout. She'd been in this house once before, months ago, when Thomas had tried to negotiate with Drummond. The study was on the second floor, overlooking the front grounds. That's where he'd be. She found the stairs and climbed, each step feeling like it took an hour. Voices drifted from somewhere below, men talking, laughing. Guards, probably, gathered in the kitchen or sitting room. The study door was closed. Light showed beneath it. Mara drew her pistol, hand shaking. This was it. No turning back. She opened the door. Drummond sat at his desk, writing in a ledger. He looked up, startled, then his eyes widened. Mrs. Vance? He set down his pen slowly. I have to admit I didn't expect you to be stupid enough to come back here.
Where are your guards? Mara asked, keeping the gun level. Close enough. Drummond leaned back in his chair, completely unbothered by the weapon pointed at his chest. You pull that trigger, and you'll be dead before my body hits the floor. Maybe I'm all right with that. Are you? He smiled. Because you don't look like a woman ready to die. You look scared. I'm not scared of you. Then why is your hand shaking? Mara tightened her grip. You killed my husband. Did I? Don't. Her voice shook with rage. Don't sit there and lie to me. I know it was you or one of your men. Thomas found something, didn't he? Something you didn't want found. Drummond's expression didn't change. Your husband was trespassing on land I'd been using for years. He refused to leave when asked politely. What happened after that was unfortunate, but necessary. Necessary. The word tasted like ash. You murdered him. I protected what was mine. Drummond stood, and Mara took a step back. And now you're here, in my house, pointing a gun at me like you have any power at all. But we both know you're not going to shoot. You don't know anything about me. I know you spent 2 years playing farmer's wife and failing at it. I know you ran when things got hard. I know you're weak. He moved around the desk. So go ahead, pull the trigger. Prove me wrong. Mara's finger tightened on the trigger. All she had to do was squeeze. One bullet, and it would be over. Justice for Thomas, freedom from Calhoun. Everything she'd come here to do. But her hand wouldn't move. That's what I thought, Drummond said. Then he lunged. He was faster than she expected, crossing the distance in 2 strides. His hand clamped around her wrist, twisting hard. Pain shot up her arm and the pistol clattered to the floor. Mara drove her knee into his stomach. Drummond grunted but didn't let go. He slammed her against the wall, his forearm across her throat. You should have stayed in the mountains, he hissed. Mara clawed at his arm, gasping for air. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. She fumbled for the knife at her belt, but her fingers wouldn't cooperate. Then gunfire erupted outside. Drummond's head snapped toward the window. His grip loosened just enough. Mara drove her thumb into his eye. Drummond screamed, stumbling back. Mara grabbed the pistol from the floor and ran. She burst into the hallway as footsteps thundered up the stairs. 2 guards appeared, weapons drawn. Stop her! Mara fired. The shot went wide, but it was enough. The guards dove for cover and she sprinted past them, taking the stairs 2 at a time. More gunfire outside. Shouting. Rowan's distraction had started. She hit the ground floor running, heading for the back door. Behind her, someone yelled orders. Boots pounded on hardwood. Mara burst outside into chaos. The barn was on fire. Men ran everywhere, some fighting the blaze, others scanning the darkness for threats. No one paid attention to the woman running across the yard. She made it to the fence, climbing over, dropping to the other side. Her lungs burned. Her legs felt like lead. But she kept running. A gunshot cracked and something slammed into her shoulder. Mara went down hard, pain exploding through her body. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. Blood soaked through her shirt, hot and sticky. No, not like this. She forced herself up, stumbling forward. The tree line was close. So close. Another shot. This one missed. Then hands grabbed her, dragging her into the shadows. I've got you, Rowan said. He pulled her into the trees, supporting her weight as they moved. Behind them, more shots. Men spreading out, searching. The shoulder, Mara gasped. I'm hit. I know. Keep moving. They stumbled through the forest, Rowan half carrying her. Mara's vision swam. She was going to pass out, going to die here in the woods, like she'd almost died in the snow. Stay with me, Rowan commanded. Don't you dare quit on me now. Can't keep going. Yes, you can. His voice was fierce. You're stronger than this, stronger than them. Now move. Somehow she did. 1 foot in front of the other, leaning on him, bleeding and broken, but still moving. They reached the horses. Rowan lifted her onto Ember, then swung up behind her, keeping her upright as he grabbed the reins. Go, he told the horse. They rode hard into the night. Mara woke to pain and the smell of wood smoke. She was back in the cabin. How they'd gotten there, she had no idea. The last thing she remembered was the rhythm of the horse beneath her and Rowan's voice telling her to hold on. Easy, Rowan's face appeared above her. Don't try to move. What happened? You got shot. Bullet went clean through, but you lost a lot of blood. He pressed something against her shoulder and she hissed. I packed the wound. You'll live if you don't do anything stupid. Mara laughed, then regretted it as pain lanced through her. Too late for that. Yeah. Rowan's expression was grim. What were you thinking going after him alone? The plan was for me to confront him. The plan was for you to talk to him while I covered you, not get into a fistfight. He didn't give me much choice. Mara tried to sit up. Rowan pushed her back down. Rest. You've been out for 2 days. 2 days? Panic surged. Calhoun hasn't shown up yet, but he will. Rowan moved to the window, staring out. Drummond's alive. That means the job isn't done. Which means we're both dead if we don't do something. I'm sorry, I should have... Stop. He turned. You did what you thought was right, and you survived. That's what matters. I failed. You faced the man who destroyed your life, and you came back breathing. That's not failure. Rowan crossed to her, kneeling beside the bed. But we're out of time. Calhoun's deadline is tomorrow. We need to decide what we're doing. Mara looked at him. Really looked. He hadn't slept. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He'd been watching over her for 2 days, keeping her alive, probably expecting Calhoun's men to show up at any moment. We run, she said. What? We run. Like you said. We leave tonight and we don't look back. Rowan studied her. You sure? I tried to kill him and I couldn't. That means I'm not the person Calhoun needs me to be. Mara met his gaze. And I'm all right with that. I'm all right with being weak if it means I don't become what he is. You're not weak. Then what am I? Human. Rowan took her hand, and that's more than either of them will ever be. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Rowan packed supplies while Mara rested, regaining her strength. By evening, she could stand without help, though her shoulder throbbed with every movement. We'll head north, Rowan said, studying his map. Cross into Canada. Find a settlement where no one knows us. Start fresh. And if Calhoun follows? Then I'll deal with him. His voice was hard. But he won't get you, that's a promise. They were loading the horses when riders appeared on the ridge. 6 of them. Calhoun in front. Too late, Mara whispered. Rowan's hand moved to his rifle. Get inside. No. Mara, no. She stepped beside him. We face this together. Calhoun rode into the clearing, his men fanning out behind him. He looked at Mara, at the bandage visible beneath her coat, and smiled. Heard you had some trouble at Drummond's ranch, he said. The job's not done, Rowan replied. We need more time. Time's up. Calhoun dismounted. You had 2 weeks. You failed. Which means we're back to the original arrangement. There is no arrangement. Oh, but there is. Calhoun gestured and his men raised their weapons. You work for me. You always have. And now your woman's going to pay the price for your defiance. You touch her, and I'll kill you. Will you? Calhoun laughed. You're outnumbered and outgunned, again. But I'm feeling generous. So here's the new deal. You come back. Work for me like you used to, and I'll let her live. No, Mara said. Both men looked at her. He's not going back, she continued, and neither am I. So if you're going to kill us, get it over with. Calhoun's smile faded. Brave words from a woman who couldn't even finish one simple job. It wasn't simple, and it wasn't right. Mara stepped forward despite Rowan's warning hand on her arm. You want Drummond dead? Do it yourself. Stop hiding behind threats and hired guns and actually face the consequences of what you do. Careful, girl. My name is Mara Vance, and I'm done being afraid of men like you. For a moment, something flickered in Calhoun's eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. Then it was gone. Kill them both, he said. The gunshot came from the trees. One of Calhoun's men dropped, blood blooming across his chest. The other spun, searching for the shooter. Another shot. Another man down. Scatter, Calhoun shouted. His men dove for cover. Rowan grabbed Mara, pulling her behind the woodpile. More shots rang out, coming from multiple directions. Who? Mara started. I don't know, but whoever it is, they're on our side. A figure emerged from the trees, the trapper. He held a rifle, smoke still rising from the barrel. Told you I don't like bullies, he called out. More figures appeared.
Men and women Mara didn't recognize, all armed, 10 of them, maybe more. "You're outnumbered now," the trapper said to Calhoun. "So here's the new deal. You leave. You forget about Hale and the woman, and you never come back to this territory." Calhoun's face twisted with rage. "You have no idea who you're threatening." "Yeah, I do. You're the same as every other coward who builds power on other people's fear." The trapper raised his rifle. "But fear only works when people let it. We're done letting it." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Calhoun remounted his horse. "This isn't over," he said, looking at Rowan. "Yes," Rowan replied. "It is." Calhoun rode away, his remaining men following. They disappeared over the ridge and the clearing fell silent. The trapper lowered his rifle. "You two all right?" "Why did you help us?" Rowan asked. "Told you. I know what Calhoun does, and I know what happens when no one stands up to him." He looked at the others who'd come with him. "We've all got our reasons. Figured it was time to do something about it." "He'll come back," Mara said. "Maybe, but next time we'll be ready." The trapper extended his hand. "Name's Daniel." Rowan shook it. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You've still got a problem down in the valley." "Drummond." "Yeah, word is he's looking for you, and he's not the forgiving type." Mara felt her shoulder throb. "I know." Daniel studied her. "You didn't kill him?" "No." "Why not?" "Because killing him wouldn't change what he did. Wouldn't bring my husband back, wouldn't fix anything." Mara looked at Rowan. "I thought I needed revenge, but what I really needed was to stop running." "So what now?" Daniel asked. "Now we go back," Rowan said, "and we finish this, the right way." Mara nodded. "The right way. Not with bullets and blood, but with truth." "We'll ride with you," Daniel offered. "Make sure you get there in one piece." "You don't have to I know, but I'm doing it anyway." He grinned. "Besides, I've always wanted to see Garrett Drummond's face when someone finally stands up to him." They rode out at dawn, 15 strong. By the time they reached the valley, word had already spread. People lined the streets watching as Mara Vance rode back into town with an army at her back. She went straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Cade looked up from his desk, eyes widening. "Mrs. Vance, I heard you were dead." "Not quite." Mara set a bundle of papers on his desk. Thomas's papers. The ones she'd kept hidden all this time. "These are land surveys my husband completed before he died. They prove Drummond's been grazing cattle on federal land. That makes him a thief." Cade glanced at the papers, then at the armed men and women filling his office. I don't know what you expect me to do with this." "Your job." Mara leaned forward. "You're going to arrest Garrett Drummond for theft, fraud, and murder. And you're going to do it today." "I can't just—" "Yes, you can." Rowan stepped forward. "Unless you want everyone in this town to know you've been taking bribes from Drummond for the past 5 years." Cade's face went pale. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Rowan dropped a leather-bound book on the desk. Drummond's ledger. The one Mara had stolen from his study before she'd been shot. "Every payment's in here. Dates, amounts, services rendered. You want to keep lying, or do you want to save whatever's left of your career?" The sheriff stared at the ledger, hands shaking. Then he stood. "I'll need deputies." "You've got them," Daniel said, gesturing to the people behind him. Within an hour, they were riding toward Drummond's ranch. This time, Mara wasn't sneaking through tunnels or hiding in shadows. This time, she was coming through the front door. Drummond was waiting when they arrived, standing on his porch with a rifle across his chest. But when he saw the sheriff's badge, saw the number of people who'd come, his confidence faltered. "Sheriff," he said carefully, "to what do I owe the pleasure? Garrett Drummond, you're under arrest for theft of federal land, fraud, and the murder of Thomas Vance." "That's absurd. I've done nothing." "Save it for the judge." Cade gestured to the deputies. "Take him." Drummond's men looked at each other, uncertain. They were outnumbered 3-1. Drummond's rifle lowered. "You'll regret this." "No," Mara said, stepping forward. "You will." As the deputies led him away in chains, Mara felt something break inside her. Not violently, quietly. Like ice melting in spring. It was over. Really over. Rowan appeared beside her. "How do you feel?" "Tired." She leaned against him. "But free." "What now?" Mara looked at the valley, at the town that had rejected her, at the people who were watching her with something like respect. Now, she said, we figure out what comes next. The trial lasted 3 days. Mara sat in the front row of the courthouse, shoulders still aching beneath the bandages, and watched as the town she'd once called home picked apart the man who'd ruled it for so long. Witnesses came forward, ranch hands who'd been ordered to move boundary markers, homesteaders who'd been threatened, a surveyor who'd been paid to falsify documents. And when it was Mara's turn to testify, she stood before the judge and told the truth about Thomas, about the land surveys he'd discovered, about the night he died. Drummond's lawyer tried to discredit her, called her vengeful, unreliable, a woman scorned. But the evidence didn't lie. The ledgers, the surveys, the testimonies, they all pointed to the same conclusion. Garrett Drummond was guilty. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in territorial prison. As the bailiff led him away, Drummond looked at Mara one last time. "This doesn't change anything," he said. "You're still nobody." Mara met his gaze, calm and steady. "Maybe, but at least I'm free." He was gone before she finished speaking. Outside the courthouse, people gathered. Some offered congratulations, others just stared. Mary Clifton approached, eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said, "for not standing with you before, for letting them treat you the way they did." "It's all right," Mara replied, though it wasn't. Not really, but holding on to anger felt like carrying stones uphill. She was tired of the weight. "What will you do now?" Mary asked. Mara looked at Rowan, who stood apart from the crowd, watching. "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." That evening, she and Rowan sat on the steps of what used to be her cabin. Someone else lived there now, a family from back east who'd bought the claim from the bank. They seemed nice enough. The husband had offered to let Mara look around, but she'd declined. Some doors were better left closed. "You could stay," Rowan said, breaking the silence. "The town owes you. They'd make room. Would they?" Mara pulled her coat tighter against the evening chill. "Or would they just tolerate me because they feel guilty?" "Does it matter?" "Yeah, it does." She looked at the valley, at the mountains rising beyond it. "I spent 2 years trying to belong here, trying to make people accept me, and it never worked. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because they'd already decided who I was supposed to be." And who was that? Thomas's wife. The quiet woman who kept house and didn't make trouble. Mara's voice was bitter. "But I'm not her anymore. Maybe I never was." Rowan was quiet for a moment. "So where does that leave us?" "I don't know." She looked at him. "You saved my life. Twice. Maybe more. I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. Let me finish." Mara took a breath. "I owe you the truth. And the truth is, I don't know what I want. I thought I wanted revenge. Then I thought I wanted justice. But now that I have it, I just feel empty. That's normal." "Is it?" "Yeah." Rowan stared at the darkening sky. "You spent months focused on one thing. Now it's done, and you don't have that anymore. You're supposed to feel lost." "How long does it last?" "Depends. For some people, a few weeks. For others..." He trailed off, but she understood. For others, it never ended. They sat in silence as stars emerged overhead. Mara thought about Thomas, about the dreams they'd shared. A homestead. A future. Children, maybe, if they could afford it. Simple dreams for a simple life. But those dreams had died with him. And trying to resurrect them felt like dancing with a ghost. "I'm going back to the cabin," she said finally. "The one in the mountains, just for a while, to figure things out." Rowan nodded. "Want company? Is that what you want? Or are you just being polite?" "I don't do polite." A small smile crossed his face. "And yeah, I want to come with you, if you'll have me." Mara studied him. The scars on his hands, the shadows in his eyes, the careful way he held himself like a man who'd learned not to expect good things. He was broken, same as her, but maybe that was all right. Maybe broken people fit together better than whole ones. "All right," she said, "but no more secrets, no more keeping things from each other. Deal. And when spring comes, we figure out what's next, together." "Together," Rowan agreed. They left town 2 days later, slipping away before dawn to avoid the farewells and questions. Daniel caught them on the road, riding up with a grin and a pack full of supplies. "Thought you might need these," he said, handing over the pack. You didn't have to do that, Mara said. I know, but I wanted to. He looked between them. You two planning to come back? Maybe. Someday? Rowan shifted in his saddle. Why? Because there's talk of organizing. People who are tired of men like Drummond running things, tired of sheriffs who look the other way. Daniel's expression turned serious. We could use people like you, people who aren't afraid to stand up. We're not heroes, Mara said. Never said you were. But you did what needed doing. That counts for something. He extended his hand. Think about it, at least. Mara shook his hand, then Rowan did the same. We will, Rowan promised. They rode north into the mountains, following trails that were already familiar. The snow had started to melt, revealing patches of brown earth and the first hints of spring green. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun was high and warm. Home. Somehow, this place had become home. Over the following weeks, they fell into a new rhythm. Rowan hunted and maintained the property. Mara planted a small garden, coaxing vegetables from the rocky soil. They talked more now, sharing stories they'd kept hidden before. Rowan told her about his brother, about the farm they'd grown up on, about the day he'd left and never looked back. Mara told him about her childhood, about the boarding house and the endless stream of strangers, about learning early that people left and you couldn't stop them. Did you love him? Rowan asked one night. They sat by the fire, the question hanging between them like smoke. Thomas? Yeah. Mara considered lying. It would be easier, but they'd promised no more secrets. Not the way I should have, she said quietly. I cared about him, respected him. But love. She shook her head. I think I loved the idea of him more than the man himself, the idea that someone wanted me, that I mattered to someone. You matter. I know that now. She looked at him. What about you? Did you ever love anyone? Once, a long time ago. Rowan's expression was distant. Her name was Sarah. We were going to get married, start a farm, but then I took a job I shouldn't have. Came back different. She saw it in my eyes, the things I'd done, left before I could explain. Did you try to find her? No, she made the right choice. He poked at the fire. I wasn't fit for that kind of life anymore. Still aren't, probably. That's not true. Isn't it? Rowan met her gaze. I've killed people, Mara. More than you know, more than I can count some nights. That doesn't just go away because I want it to. No, but it doesn't define you either. Mara moved closer. You could have let me die in that storm. Could have turned me away when I found your journal. Could have left me to face Drummond alone. But you didn't. Every time you chose to help, to protect. That matters more than what you did before. You really believe that? I have to. Because if people can't change, if we're stuck being who we were at our worst, then what's the point? Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he reached out, taking her hand. Thank you, he said. For what? For seeing something worth saving. Mara squeezed his hand. Same to you. Spring turned to summer. The garden flourished. Mara taught Rowan how to preserve vegetables, how to make bread from scratch, how to repair clothes instead of just throwing them away. Rowan taught her how to track deer, how to fish the mountain streams, how to read weather patterns in the clouds. They were building something. Not a homestead exactly, but a life. Small and quiet and theirs. One afternoon, while gathering firewood, Mara found the journal, the one with the names. Rowan had left it on the shelf, and curiosity got the better of her. She opened it to a random page. Names, all crossed out, but at the bottom, new writing. Not names this time. Words. Started garden today. Mara says tomatoes won't grow this high, but we're trying anyway. She laughed when I said I'd never grown anything that didn't die. Told me everyone kills their first garden. Made me feel less useless. Mara turned the page. More entries, not about killing or debts, but about life. About her. Taught her how to shoot a moving target. She's getting better. Doesn't flinch anymore when she pulls the trigger. Part of me hates that I had to teach her that. Part of me is glad she knows how to protect herself. Talked about Thomas tonight. She said she doesn't miss him the way she thought she would. Feels guilty about it. Told her guilt is just love with nowhere to go. Not sure that helped, but she smiled anyway. The entries went on, weeks of them, months, a record not of death, but of something else. Something that looked like hope. You're reading my journal again, Rowan said from the doorway. Mara jumped. I'm sorry, It's all right. He crossed to her, looking at the pages. I don't write about the names anymore. Don't need to. They're still there, but they're not active. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Mara closed the journal carefully. Why do you write about me? Because I don't want to forget. Rowan's voice was soft. I spent years trying to forget things. The jobs, the faces, the man I was. But you? I want to remember you. Remember this, whatever it is. And what is it? I don't know. He moved closer. But it feels important. They stood there inches apart, the afternoon light slanting through the window. Mara could see the flecks of gray in his eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his jaw tightened when he was trying not to say something. Rowan, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle or romantic or any of the things she'd read about in books. It was desperate and clumsy and real. His hands cupped her face, her fingers tangled in his shirt, and for a moment nothing else existed. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rowan looked terrified. I shouldn't have. Yes, you should have. Mara pulled him back, kissing him again. This time slower, softer, like they had all the time in the world. Maybe they did. That night they didn't talk about what it meant, didn't label it or define it or worry about the future. They just lay tangled together in the narrow bed, listening to the wind in the trees, and let it be enough. Summer faded to fall. The garden died back, but they'd preserved enough to last the winter. Rowan started building an addition to the cabin, a real bedroom, with space for a proper bed and a window facing east to catch the morning light. You planning to stay that long? Mara asked, watching him work. Planning to give us the option. He hammered in another nail. Unless you're planning to kick me out. Not planning on it. Good. They worked side by side, building something that would outlast the season. And slowly, carefully, they talked about the future. We could go back, Mara said one evening, to the valley. Daniel's group, they're doing good work. Organizing homesteaders, standing up to the big ranchers. We could help. You want to go back? Part of me does, the part that's tired of running. She looked at him. But only if you're willing. I won't force you into anything. Rowan set down his tools. I've been thinking about it, about what I could offer, and the truth is, I don't know if I can help them the way they need. My skills are specific, and not particularly useful in polite company. You're more than what you used to do. I know, but that doesn't change what I'm good at. He met her gaze. If we go back, I want to do something different, something that actually helps people instead of just scaring them. Like what? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. A small smile. We'll figure it out. Winter came early that year, but they were ready. The cabin was warm, the supplies were stocked, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Mara felt prepared for what came next. They spent the long winter nights reading by firelight, playing cards, and talking about everything and nothing. Rowan was teaching her how to carve wood, simple things at first, spoons and bowls, then more complex shapes. Mara taught him the poetry she'd memorized as a child, laughing when he stumbled over the words. I sound ridiculous, he complained. You sound human. She kissed his cheek. Keep going. On the darkest night of winter, Rowan gave her a gift. A small wooden box he'd carved, with her initials on the lid. For keeping things safe, he said. Important things. Inside, Mara found a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully. It was a deed, to the cabin and the land around it, in her name. Rowan, I can't. Yes, you can. He took her hands. This place is yours. Has been since you walked through that door half frozen and stubborn as hell. I'm just making it official. But where will you? Here. If you'll let me. His voice was steady. I know we haven't talked about it, about what this is, or where it's going, but I want to stay. With you. For as long as you'll have me. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. Why? Because for the first time in my life, I don't want to run. Don't want to hide. I just want to be here. With you. He brushed a tear from her cheek. Is that all right? Yeah. She laughed through the tears. Yeah, that's all right. They held each other as snow fell outside, coating the world in white. And Mara realized something.
She'd spent so long looking for a place to belong, for people to accept her, that she'd missed the truth. Belonging wasn't about geography or acceptance. It was about choosing someone and having them choose you back. It was about building something together, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. She'd found that here. In a cabin in the mountains with a man who used to kill for money and now carved wooden spoons. It wasn't the life she'd imagined, wasn't the life anyone would have predicted, but it was hers, and that made it perfect. Spring came again, bringing with it a visitor. Daniel rode up one morning, horse-laden with supplies and news. "Thought you two might be getting cabin fever," he said, grinning. "Just a little," Mara admitted. "What's happening in the valley?" "Change. Real change." Daniel dismounted, accepting the coffee Rowan offered. "We've organized a homesteaders association. Got representatives from 12 different claims. Even convinced the territorial governor to send an inspector to look into land fraud." "That's incredible." "It is, but we need more." He looked between them. "We need people who know how to stand up to threats, how to protect settlers who can't protect themselves. People like you." Rowan and Mara exchanged glances. "What exactly are you asking?" Rowan said. "I'm asking if you consider coming back, not permanently maybe, but regularly. Help us train people, organize defenses, deal with the ranchers who still think they can push people around." Daniel's expression was earnest. "You don't have to decide now, but think about it." After he left, they talked long into the night. "It's dangerous," Rowan said. "So is doing nothing." "You could get hurt again." "I could get hurt walking to the stream." Mara took his hand. "I'm not saying we have to do this, but Daniel's right. We have skills other people don't, experience. If we could use that to actually help people." "You want to go back?" "I want to try. Don't you?" Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "Yeah, I do." They returned to the valley in late spring, riding down familiar trails with purpose instead of fear. The town had changed. New buildings, new faces, a sense of energy that hadn't been there before. Daniel met them at the edge of town, along with 24 others. Homesteaders mostly, but also shopkeepers, a school teacher, even a few former ranch hands who'd quit when Drummond went to prison. "Welcome back," Daniel said. Over the following months, they worked. Rowan taught defensive tactics, how to protect property without escalating to violence. Mara organized a system for sharing resources, helping new settlers get established. Together they mediated disputes, stood up to aggressive ranchers, and slowly built something that looked like community. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, arguments, nights when Mara wondered if they were making any difference at all. But then she'd see a new family moving into a cabin they'd helped build, or watch a young woman learn to shoot so she could protect herself, and she'd remember why they'd come back. One evening, after a particularly long day, Mara and Rowan walked through the town square. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. "You think Thomas would approve?" Mara asked. "Of what we're doing?" Rowan considered that. "I think he'd be proud. You're helping people the way he wanted to. Just differently." "Yeah," Mara smiled. "Differently." They passed the old homestead. The family who lived there had expanded it, added a proper barn and a garden that put Mara's mountain plot to shame. Children played in the yard, laughing and chasing each other. It hurt, seeing what could have been. But it also felt right. The land was being used, loved, protected. That's what Thomas had wanted. Not for her specifically, but for anyone willing to work it. "You all right?" Rowan asked. "Yeah, I am." And she meant it. That fall, the territorial governor visited. He toured the homesteads, met with the association, and listened as people shared their stories. When he left, he promised reforms, better land laws, protections for settlers, consequences for fraud. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. Winter came again, and Mara and Rowan returned to the cabin. They'd spend the cold months there, then go back to the valley in spring, a pattern that worked for them. On the longest night of the year, they sat by the fire, warm and safe. "I've been thinking," Rowan said, "about the journal." "What about it?" "I want to burn it." Mara looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because I don't need it anymore. The names, the guilt, the constant reminder of who I was, it's just weight, and I'm tired of carrying it." He met her gaze. I know what I did. I'll always know. But I don't need to keep proving it to myself. What will you do instead? Start a new one. Write about things worth remembering. A small smile. Like stubborn widows who ride into blizzards and accidental gardens that actually grow tomatoes. Mara laughed. That sounds better. They burned the journal that night, watching the pages curl and blacken in the flames. It felt like releasing something, letting go of a burden she hadn't realized he'd been carrying alone. Thank you, Rowan said as the last page turned to ash. For what? For helping me remember I'm more than the worst thing I've ever done. Mara took his hand. We both are. Spring came with wildflowers and hope. They returned to the valley, ready for another season of work. But this time, Mara didn't feel like she was running toward something or away from it. She was just living, building, choosing each day to be better than the last. One afternoon, while helping a new family settle in, Mara paused to look at the valley. The mountains rose in the distance, snow-capped and eternal. The town sprawled below, growing and changing, and everywhere she looked, she saw possibility. You did this, Daniel said, joining her. You and Rowan. You showed people they could fight back, could build something worth protecting. We just helped. They did the work. Don't sell yourself short, he smiled. You're a teacher now, whether you meant to be or not. A teacher? Mara liked the sound of that, not teaching reading or arithmetic, but something more important. Teaching people they were stronger than they thought, that running wasn't the only option, that broken things could be rebuilt if you were willing to do the work. That evening, she and Rowan sat on the porch of the cabin they'd been loaned in town. It was smaller than the mountain place, but comfortable enough. What do you think happens next? Mara asked. More of this, probably. Building, organizing, dealing with whatever problems come up. Rowan leaned back. Why? Just wondering if we ever get to rest. Do you want to? Mara thought about it. A year ago, rest would have sounded perfect. But now? Now she had purpose, direction, people who depended on her in work that mattered. No, she said finally, not yet. Good. Rowan pulled her close. Because I'm not done either. They sat together as the sun set, watching their town settle in for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new people to help, new battles to fight. But tonight, they had this. Each other, a home, and the knowledge that they'd survived everything that tried to break them. The frontier had tested them, tried to bury them, told them they weren't strong enough to matter. It had been wrong. Years later, when people told the story of how the valley changed, they'd talk about the Homesteaders Association, about the reforms and the new laws, and the way ordinary people stood up to the men who'd ruled through fear. But those who'd been there, who'd lived through it, knew the truth. It started with a widow who chose the storm over surrender, with a killer who chose redemption over running, with two broken people who found each other in the worst possible circumstances and decided that surviving wasn't enough. They wanted to live, really live, and in the end, that made all the difference. Mara Vance never became famous, never had her name in the history books or monuments built in her honor. But every spring, when new settlers arrived in the valley, someone would tell them the story about the woman who'd lost everything and came back stronger, about the man who'd been a weapon and became a builder, about how they'd changed not just the valley, but themselves. And that story, passed from person to person, season to season, became something more valuable than fame. It became truth, the kind of truth that says you're not defined by your worst moments, that change is possible, that broken people can heal if they're willing to do the work and brave enough to let someone help. On a warm summer evening, many years after that first blizzard, Mara sat on the porch of the mountain cabin, gray now, with lines around her eyes and hands weathered from work, but alive. So alive. Rowan sat beside her, just as gray, just as weathered. They didn't talk much anymore. Didn't need to. Everything important had already been said. Below them, the valley stretched out, dotted with homesteads and farms and towns that hadn't existed when she'd first ridden through, proof that something good could grow even in the hardest soil. No regrets? Rowan asked quietly. Mara thought about it, about Thomas and the life they'd planned, about the woman she'd been, scared and desperate and certain she had nothing left. Some, she admitted, but not about this. Never about this. Good. He took her hand, scarred fingers intertwining with hers. Me neither. They sat together as the sun set, painting the world in shades of gold and red. And Mara realized something she'd been too young, too hurt, too afraid to understand before. Home wasn't a place. It was a choice, a decision you made every single day to stay, to fight, to build something worth protecting. She'd made that choice, and it had changed everything. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Life continued, wild and beautiful and unforgiving. But Mara wasn't afraid of it anymore. She'd survived the worst the frontier could throw at her, had faced down men who thought they owned the world, had learned that strength wasn't about never falling down, but about getting back up every single time. And she'd learned one more thing, perhaps the most important of all. You don't have to be perfect to be worth saving. Don't have to have all the answers or never make mistakes. You just have to keep trying, keep choosing, keep believing that tomorrow might be better than today. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't. But the trying, that's what makes you human. That's what makes you whole.